The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is brought to you by Clinica Sierra Vista.
Welcome back to the 17 News at Sunrise podcast, where we share your news on your schedule.
We begin with some breaking news this morning of a double shooting on Union Avenue. It happened near the Diamond Shamrock gas station on Union Avenue and 4th Street. The gas station, the parking lot next to it, and 4th Street were all taped off. Bakersfield police say around 2:20 this morning, an officer was patrolling the area and saw the assault happening and called for backup. One person was taken to the hospital with moderate to major wounds. The other person had minor injuries. 2 people were arrested. The investigation continues.
17 Crime Watch now. Kern Secret Witness is now offering a reward of up to $2,500 for information leading to the location and arrest of 19-year-old Christian Gaines. Gaines is accused of killing 21-year-old Justin Griffin Jr. on November 3rd near the intersection of Weibel and Plans Roads. Forensic evidence linked him and 2 other suspects, Dimitri King and David Gray, to the scene and to the Chevrolet Malibu used in the homicide. Both King and Gray have already been arrested. Gaines is described as 6 feet 3 inches tall, weighing 210 pounds, with multiple neck tattoos. Police say he's considered armed and dangerous. If you have any information on where Gaines may be, please call Kern Secret Witness at 322-4040.
Now to the coronavirus in Kern County, and on the 2-year anniversary of the first reported case of COVID-19 in our area, Public Health yesterday announced 18 new deaths due to the virus, along with 108 new cases. Keep in mind, those new deaths reported yesterday happened earlier this year. That brings our death toll to 2,222 lives lost since the beginning of the pandemic. Hospitalizations continue to drop. State data shows there are 47 patients in the hospital with the virus in Kern. 8 more are in the ICU. Drug maker Moderna is following Pfizer in asking the Food and Drug Administration to authorize a 4th shot of its COVID-19 vaccine. However, Moderna's request for a second booster is for all adults, not just seniors. U.S. health officials currently recommend a primary series of 2 doses of the Moderna vaccine and a booster dose months later. Moderna says its request for an additional dose is based on recently published data in the U.S. and Israel following the emergence of Omicron.
From our 17 News follow-up file, months after it was taken from an Oildale post office, one of Buck Owens' signature red, white, and blue guitars has finally returned. But it comes back with a stern warning from law enforcement for anyone scheming to try anything like this again. 17's Christian Galeno reports.
And I brought this for you.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
For many months, news of the brazen burglar at the Buck Owens post office made many hearts skip a beat.
This one being the Buck Owens guitar and the history that he has in Bakersfield. A lot of people were concerned about the guitar and wanted it back in its rightful spot.
Thursday morning, the country crooner's guitar was restored and returned from the streets of Bakersfield. The investigation is ongoing and charges have not been filed yet, but suspects have been identified.
The guitar seems to be mostly intact. There was damage to the post office in the course of stealing it, and there was damage to history, I guess, in that the Buck Owens post office lost its Buck Owens guitar.
According to KCSO, the guitar was stolen from the post office in the early morning hours of December 27. 4 days later, a portion of the guitar was recovered in an abandoned building. Then on January 8th, KCSO received a tip that led them to the remaining portion of the guitar at a Green Lawn cemetery.
Yes, I've worn blisters on my heel.
Whoever is responsible for the burglary should be prepared to face justice for it.
As many would pray every day for the return of the tricolor guitar, the Buck Owens post office would be together again with a piece of living history, just like the good old days, but not without a stern warning.
We are going to seek charges against these individuals, and I'd like to see them be federal charges.
Don't do it. The person who stole this guitar didn't benefit from it. The feds are now after them, and they obviously didn't have as many friends as they thought they did. So it wasn't worth it to the person who burglarized this post office.
Ever walk the streets of Bakersfield?
Oh.
Months after it was taken from an Oildale post office, one of Buck Owens' guitars was returned. Investigators say it was not damaged.
This morning, we're learning more about the $400 check you could be receiving in the mail to help with rising gas prices. A group of Democratic lawmakers yesterday announced their push. A group of lawmakers talked about their push to send the money to every Californian who pays income tax, even if you don't own or drive a car. Lawmakers say everyone feels the effects of the rising cost of gas.
This is a much more thoughtful proposal than a cut in the gas tax, because a cut in the gas tax has no guarantee that that money will end up in the pockets of consumers.
Republicans earlier this week attempted to force a vote to suspend the state's gas tax. They say they're still pushing for a gas tax holiday, but also support the Democrats' rebate proposal, noting both can be done with California's multi-billion-dollar budget surplus. Funds for the rebate would come from $9 billion of the state's budget surplus, which is expected to be more than $45 billion this year. Meantime, if you did not fill up your gas tank yesterday, sorry, you'll pay a little extra this morning. Kern County's average for a gallon of gas is $5.73. AAA says the national average is $4.29, while California's average is $5.80. Our website, kget.com, tracks the lowest prices in the Bakersfield area thanks to GasBuddy.com. According to their findings, there is not a gas station in our county that sells gas lower than $5 a gallon. However, there are 2 gas stations tied for the lowest price for a gallon of regular gas at $5.13 a gallon. You can find it at Fast Trip on 34th Street in Central Bakersfield, or Fast Trip Fuel in Howard's at 1332 Bernard Street. Now, those prices do change often, so you can check our website, kget.com, and then click on the traffic selection to find the latest gas prices.
This morning, a major milestone for a local group trying to impose term limits on Kern County supervisors. A group of activists and organizers called We Are Kern County hopes to limit Kern supervisors to 2 terms, or 8 years in total. Currently, there's no limit to how long supervisors can sit on the board. 4 of the 5 supervisors have served at least 8 years, with the longest being Mike Maggard serving 15. Last month, the group announced it surpassed the 20,000 signatures required to put the term limit proposal up for a vote by county residents. They gathered yesterday to turn in those signatures to the Kern County Elections Office for an official count.
We've been knocking on doors, talking to, community members, and everyone's just supportive of term limits because it just makes sense, like if we have a governor, if we have a president that have term limits, why don't we have it for, our supervisors here?
If the elections office verifies that there are enough valid signatures, the measure will appear on the November ballot. Kern residents will be able to vote on the issue.
The woman accused of fleeing the scene of a deadly crash on Stockdale Highway in 2020 is scheduled to be in court later today. In July 2020, 65-year-old Deborah Ann Gano died in a 4-car crash. Police say one of the drivers in the crash took off. Investigators eventually identified Stephanie Henniger as the driver responsible for that deadly crash. They also say she admitted to being behind the wheel at the time. Henniger is charged with multiple felonies, including vehicular manslaughter with gross negligence. She is scheduled to appear in court for a readiness hearing later today.
Also due in court today, the men accused of killing another driver while street racing. The deadly crash happened just before Thanksgiving in 2019. Investigators say Ronald Pierce and Israel Maldonado were street racing when the crash happened on Old River Road near Ming Avenue. Investigators say Pierce was intoxicated while he drove at speeds reaching over 130 miles per hour. Although Maldonado didn't crash and wasn't under the influence, police say he instigated the race. Maria Navarro was killed in that crash, and as she was driving with 2 children. Pierce and Maldonado are charged with murder and other crimes. They're due in court today for a readiness hearing.
A 77-year-old woman has pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter in the shooting death of her roommate at a Bakersfield retirement home. Sandra Bonnertz entered the plea in court yesterday, and she's expected to be sentenced to 10 years in prison next month. A caregiver discovered the body of Bonnert's 83-year-old roommate, Winnie Smith, on July 11th in the room they shared at Pinewood Glen Retirement Community. She had been shot in the chest 3 times. According to court documents, Sandra Bonnertz told police that Smith, quote, asked me to do it, and I did. Bonnertz is scheduled to be sentenced April 15th.
Your time now is 5:36 and making news around the nation. A shocking development this morning in the deadly crash in Texas that killed several members of a college golf team. The NTSB says the driver responsible for the crash was just 13 years old. In a briefing yesterday, officials say the front left tire of the truck, which was a spare tire, failed. That's when the truck swerved into oncoming traffic, crashing head-on with a van. 9 people were killed, including both people in the truck. The NTSB says that while their investigation is still in the early stages, they believe several people in both vehicles were not wearing seatbelts.
In education news this morning, officials with the Kern High School District held a beam signing ceremony for the new Del Oro High School. KHSD posted these photos to social media showing staff members and construction personnel etch their names into those beams. The ceremony marked a construction milestone for the school site, which is soon to become the 19th in the district. The construction of the new school is paid in part through Measure K, a bond measure passed by Kern County voters in 2016. Del Oro High School is set to open this August on East Panama Lane in Cottonwood Road.
Your time is 5:37. It's hard to call someone lucky for getting a bump on the head, but that might actually apply to Carter Henley.
The preschooler's first T-ball game last spring ended in an injury and a life-saving diagnosis. 17's Chris Burton joins us in studio this morning with more. And Chris, I have to say, this is a story that is very interesting. It almost sounds counterintuitive that there's a kind of a miracle behind getting a head injury.
Right, yeah, you don't usually think that, oh my gosh, I got a bump on the head, I'm going to be saved. But in fact, Carter Henley did, and I don't want to keep anybody in suspense here. The story does have a happy ending. Carter Henley is doing great, but again, yes, he's doing great. He is such a sweet kid, and he has a ton of energy. But if it weren't for that T-ball collision and some quick thinking by his parents, that might not be the case.
Carter Henley needed a little help with the rules of T-ball.
First T-ball game he's ever played in, so he was kind of learning everything.
The boisterous 3-year-old took the field for his first ever baseball game last April. He got the hang of the defense okay, just run towards the ball.
And then we moved over to offense, and he was on first base. And so I told him, hey, when they hit the ball, and he goes, yeah, Dad, I got it, go get it. And I was like, no, we run to second base.
The bump on his head from that collision ended his first game, but it might have saved his life. Out to lunch the next day, Carter threw up. His parents feared a concussion.
I told him we have to take him to the ER. He has to be checked out for concussion.
So they took Carter to the hospital for a CT scan, then an MRI. The reality was worse.
I'll tell you that the moment I realized this is going to be really serious is when the doctor walked in with 3 nurses. And I went, well, if this was nothing, probably would just come in by themselves.
The tests revealed a nightmare, a tumor growing in Carter's brain. Because of the nature of brain tumors, it was impossible to know just how dangerous it was.
We really can't know for sure until we take the tumor out and look at it under a microscope and run those molecular tests.
The Henleys took Carter to Stanford Children's Health in Palo Alto, where doctors gave them a choice: remove it now or monitor it. The Henleys chose removal and surgery. But the 3-year-old remained upbeat, excited about the ice cream, orange juice, and donuts at the hospital. His recovery was quick, just a week, and good luck struck again.
Carter has a benign brain tumor that's very unlikely to come back, so he has a great prognosis.
Carter is 4 now. He's just finished flag football season, and he's excited for the weather to get warmer for one big reason.
I like to be in the pool, and I like on the throw a dad in the pool.
You want to throw your dad in the pool?
Yes!
And while the bump on his head is gone, he'll be the first one to show you his cool new scar.
Do you have a touchdown dance?
Yeah. What's it?
Do you have a touchdown dance?
What dance do you do when you do a touchdown?
Well, as you can see there, Carter wants to play tackle football, but his parents are understandably a little bit hesitant. But I will tell you that he's very excited to get back on the baseball field.
Oh, that is
gives me chills.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that could have been a completely different story.
Absolutely,
But
you know.
so glad it ended up the way it did.
Me too. He's such a sweet kid, a sweet family, and you know, brain tumors, if you catch them early, they're a little bit easier to deal with.
Yeah.
So really, really lucky in this case.
What a blessing in disguise. God works in strange ways.
That he does.
That is so cool. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks so much.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at Sunrise.
The 17 News at Sunrise podcast is a production of KGET and Nexstar Media Group. For more on all of the headlines in today's show, head to kget.com.